Yes, I'm wandering around another sketchy neighborhood, but I'm having a whole lot of fun with these people, but don't expect to see me up there dancing. All coming up on today's Hot Zone.
This is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
So I am sitting here in a traffic jam way out in the middle of nowhere in north of Medellin, Colombia. And the reason I'm sitting here without moving is because part of the mountainside caved in and covered the road. So now they've got a bulldozer and a dump truck and a backhoe, and they're trying to clear the road enough for people to be able to get through. Apparently that's a pretty common thing here in the northern part of Colombia. Very, very extreme mountainous topography. And so the reason I'm here is because I was in Panama a month and a half ago. We went out to the Darien jungle, interviewed some migrants who had walked through the jungle. You've probably seen that story. If you haven't, you should go back and watch some of those podcasts from the end of April, early May. And I talked to a lady a couple days ago who had just come back from that same area. She said that where the camps that I was in had 300 to 500 people, now they're talking about maybe 2,000 to 3,000 people in each of those camps. And it's clear that Panama is being absolutely overwhelmed by the migrant crisis. There's so many people that are trying to get in, and this is something that really did not come out in a lot of the news stories about what's going on at the U.S. southern border, and that is people are getting into the United States and they're doing so illegally. They're overwhelming the system there, and so the Border Patrol has to just let them go. And over 1,000 people a day are being released into the United States. Well, word travels fast in Latin America. And so there are literally millions of people in Latin America who are saying, hey, if we get to the United States, they're going to just let us in. And we can, go up there with our families, whatever, and we'll be able to get into the United States, no problem. That number of people grows and grows and grows and grows to the point where there's a pipeline now of people moving up through Latin America. And here I am in South America. We're not even into Panama yet. And this lady I talked to the other day said she was told by some of the migrants that are coming through into Panama now that there's a group of 35,000 migrants somewhere in Colombia making their way north toward the jungle. That is absolutely mind-boggling. 35,000 people. I believe what they're talking about is that there's probably that many in the pipeline, not that many in one group. You know what I mean? And so here comes a truckload of dirt that they just pulled off the road, and here comes an ambulance. I hope nobody got hurt too bad. I'm not sure what that's all about, but it looks like we're starting to move now finally. That's good. So if there's 35,000 people in the pipeline just in Colombia that are all heading ostensibly to the United States, that would be a major news story, and that's exactly why I've come. My intent, my objective on this trip is to go to the southern part of the Darien Gap in a place called Turbo in Colombia and find out if there's an overwhelming number of people getting ready to come through into Panama. So I'm just here for a day or two, but I'll be keeping you updated on what I find. And if I can ever make it up there at the rate I'm going, it's going to take me a while. There's a lot of construction on these roads. And here I am passing a ambulance on a curve, on a hill. Why not? Because why not? That's just what people do out here. Okay? Okay, I'm getting something to eat here at Kentucky Chicken. I'm sure they didn't steal that from anybody. It's a long drive, about 9 hours all told, and part of it is because there are so many cave-ins along the road, but it would be 6.5 even if it wasn't for that. So it's a long drive. That's all there is to it. And it's not that far distance-wise, but this road is so winding, just up and down these very extreme mountains, that that's just how it is. I've seen several what I would call illegal mom and pop gold mines as I've been driving today. And that reminds me of a story I did about the miners in Colombia a couple of years ago.
Medellin, Colombia. In the 1980s, it was known as the murder capital of the world and was the epicenter of the drug cartel run by notorious kingpin Pablo Escobar. But a lot has changed in 30 years. Today, Medellin is working hard to portray a reborn city that is safe and traveler-friendly. The Colombian government has made great strides in countering the drug traffickers with the help of more than $9 billion in military and other aid from the United States over the last 30 years. Total production of cocaine in the country dropped by over 70% over the 2 decades following its peak in 1991. But the cartels and criminal gangs are shifting their business model to a different product, one for which Colombia is also known: gold. Some are calling it the new cocaine, and the illicit gains total more than $2.5 billion a year. Carolina Arbales is an activist who leads a socially responsible mining project.
It's impossible to say how much gold we have in Colombia.
Colombians have mined gold for thousands of years. Now it's being extracted at an ever-increasing rate, but as much as 80% of the mining being done is illegal. A large percentage of that is now finding its way into the hands of terrorist and criminal organizations.
It's easy to transport the gold, it's easy to sell it, and it's very profitable. It's a very good business for them.
So good, in fact, that the cartels reputedly now make 5 times as much from illicit gold mining than from cocaine. The government estimates that there are 6,000 illegal mines today across the country, but Carolina says that number is misleading.
Not all the miners that are now called illegal miners are criminal. They're just traditional miners that don't know how to make the transition to become legal.
Finding a miner to discuss the subject on camera turned out to be a challenge. It took us 2 days to find a mine in the mountains outside of Medellin. We've been driving around trying to find one of these illegal gold mines, and we were told there was one somewhere up this hill, but we're over 9,000 feet above sea level, clear up in the clouds now, and we haven't found one yet. So I'm not sure how much farther our vehicle can make it up this road, but we're going to do what we can and see if we can find a mine. We eventually reached a small village. The people were reluctant to talk at first, but after a while gave us the name of a local mine owner who eventually agreed to an interview. Eladio Antonio Suarez comes from a long line of miners. He's been mining here for the past 12 years.
The actual mines are down below. We bring the gold up with a winch.
He feels fortunate to work in an area that sees little cartel influence.
In these parts, it's very difficult to make a living. We end up working for the cartels whether we like it or not. You have to be on their side or else.
The 100-year-old mine shaft burrows deep into the mountain, and down here the work is difficult and dangerous. We're now several hundred meters underground, and they estimate there's over $20 billion worth of gold in these mountains. The question is how to get it out. these miners are trying to get their share of it by loading 2 or 3 tons of rock a day by hand into these mine cars and taking them up topside. This mine is now considered legal, but Suarez does not have good things to say about the process or the Colombian government, which has added massive regulations and up to 70% tax on his profits.
We're gonna have to get a new generator to process the gold faster and easier, since the States keeps putting more regulations on us. It's the only way to make a profit. Once they get done taking their taxes out, we aren't left with much.
The miners who work this area of Colombia don't mean to support terrorism or drug traffickers, but in a lot of cases they don't have any choice. That's because the narcos charge what's called a vacuna, or a tax, on every mine that's in this area, and they have to pay it. It's a protection racket, and if they don't, things could go very badly for them. All right, folks, we are in Turbo in the north end of Colombia, right on the border where it goes into the into Panama through the Darien Gap. And these locals, this is what nightlife is here in the middle of nowhere. They're having a great time. So all day long I've been seeing tons of buses coming this direction and coming back from here. It seems like a lot more buses than you would need for a town of this size coming from Medellin, and I imagine that's because they're carrying migrants up here. But once they get here, they apparently like spread out. But there are lots of them here. They just kind of get all spread out by this time of night. And so I'm gonna plan to get up early in the morning, get out here and start looking around for these guys, go down to the docks where they get their boat ride, and just see what it's like on this end. I'm very interested. I've always wanted to come here. You know, a lot of people want to go to Cancun or Cozumel or someplace like that, and for me, Turbo, Colombia, that's a place to be. That's exactly what I wanted to see, because I actually wrote about Turbo, Colombia in one of my novels, and I had this rule when I was writing my novels that I didn't want to write about any place I hadn't physically been to myself, because it's hard to make it accurate. But there was a scene in the book that I had to put it in Turbo, and so I kind of imagined it. So I'll be interested to get down to the water, to the docks, and see if it looks anything like I thought it did. See how accurate I got. So this is like a little town square. There's a bunch of people here. Oh my gosh, you gotta see this. It's a dragon train. That's something you don't see every day. I might have to ride the dragon train through town if I can figure out where they stop. So there's a church service just getting out right here behind me, and I talked to a guy there for a little bit about where do I find the migrants and where do they stay, and you know what's their experience like here. And he said, well, we don't really do much for them. There's several foundations in town, he said, that help them out, but he said in the morning there will be lots of them down here because the immigration office apparently is right here on this street. Must be across from that nightclub over there. Oh yeah, there it is. I see it. So yeah, right here is the immigration office, and it looks like, let me guess, this guy what time they open in the morning. ¿A qué hora abren?
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.